anyway, today we're talking about Batman Arkham Shadow. In a lot of ways, this is the Batman Arkham sequel everybody wanted, except it's in VR. It is a really good game, and it is fundamentally a VR game, but I do still hope there's like a non-VR version released. It would have to be pretty different, mainly just because I want this to be more well known. It almost feels non-canon when not everybody's able to play it. I don't think VR is going to be mainstream for like another 5 years at least. And even then, I think a lot of people just won't play it, like how some people just don't play multiplayer games. But this is definitely a good game on its own, and if you have the opportunity, I absolutely recommend playing it. But before we talk about this dark and mysterious game, let's talk about a demo for my dark and mysterious game. The demo for What Happens at Midnight, my action survival horror FPS, is available for free right now on Steam. You're sent to investigate the town at nightfall, and quickly find out interdimensional forces are invading our world. Hop between worlds, meet strange characters, and survive cosmic horrors once you find out what happens after midnight. Let's get into the gameplay. This is a good translation of the Arkham combat we know into VR. When I first played it, the combat seemed kind of slow paced, and technically it is slower paced, but when they throw more enemies at you and you have longer series of attack and defense, it has the same intensity as the regular games, even if the pace is technically slower. I like how they incorporate precise / directional punches being a requirement. It feels good and helps you to keep a rhythmic pace like in the main games instead of just spam punching like it's Wii boxing. They added in a dodge move, which is sort of works like a shorter range version of the jump over things move in the main games, which feels really good, especially when you like see a thug stumbling after missing a punch and you punch him back, or dodging out of the way of gunfire. Feels really good. The gadgets are fun, but throughout the Arkham series, the gadgets have always been kind of weird for us, moving backward and forward in time, and like, why doesn't Batman have this, and why doesn't Batman use that? And I think this one's kind of the weirdest about that. Like, you don't have access to the Batclaw until late in the game. Now, it is more powerful in this game, but it still feels really weird because it's like a very early upgrade in Asylum. There's also things like counterattacking after a knife attack being an upgrade now, which like seems really weird. And there's also like, this is only supposed to be a bit after Origins, but like the glue bombs and the grapple gadget aren't here, and that feels really weird. But overall, the gadgets that are here are fun. You have the batterings and explosives that are good, but they are less powerful. They only stun enemies and don't do actual damage. I guess they didn't want to turn it into a first-person shooter. You also have the disruptor for stealth, which again is like long time early, and that works well. The stealth predator sections still have a lot of what makes Arkham stealth great. The weeding out of individual targets and taking them out one by one still feels good. But the rest doesn't really translate quite as well to VR. It's not as fast or fluid as the regular games. Plus there's trouble with the AI walking when they're scared. It's pretty wonky. They go all over the place. And sometimes the guards even get stuck on things. The boss fights are fairly good, gameplay-wise, but are lacking in a lot of the typical Arkham spectacle. And only one is against a main supervillain. This being a VR game, there's a few climbing sections which are decent. The rat trophy and other puzzles are good and utilize mechanics unique to this game in particular. Also, there's some good hidden in plain sight trophies that take advantage of the fact that the game's in first person. Overall, they're about as good as Cities puzzles, but not as good as Knights puzzles in my opinion. Level design wise, it's more linear and focused mainly on Blackgate, similar to how Asylum was focused on Arkham, which was probably better for VR, but there are aesthetic drawbacks, which I'll talk about later. I don't think open world would work as good for VR. It would be nice to explore, but I feel it would be hard to find your way around in first person. And also, the open world leads to more potential bugs, and developers are still getting used to VR. Plus, cave diving and grapple boosting would probably make a lot of people sick. The story is pretty good and tries to be a bit deeper than other Arkham games. It takes a lot of cues from the most recent Batman film. It takes a lot of interesting dives into all the characters' motivations, which works pretty well. The villains are looked at a little more sympathetically. It feels kind of like the animated series. Don't worry, they're not gonna try to justify the villains or blame Batman or anything. They're doing it right. They're just sort of exploring, the why of everything a lot better. It does touch on some political stuff, but again, don't worry. It isn't anywhere close to as bad or unbalanced as when most creatives do this these days. It's a lot more intelligently done. That being said, for me, I think sometimes it clashes with the fantastical nature of the Arkham world a bit too much for me. One thing the game does pretty well is give a lot of backstory to the characters in the Arkham series. The Arkham series has lent more gameplay, being born in the 360 era, so they haven't had as much time to explore their characters. So this really helps things out. Especially for Harley Quinn and Harvey Dent, who, although they've made a lot of appearances in the Arkham series, haven't really had a chance to shine yet before now. There's also some good stuff with Scarecrow and Scarface and the ventriloquists. I like how they have a left brain, right brain sort of thing, with Crane being the logical and cold one, and Harley being the warm and friendly one. But despite this, we know that they end up in a similar place. And Crane's turn is more obvious, but you can still tell how Harley's openness will betray her. She talks about if she could get through to just one person, she'll have done her job, and you can tell she probably ends up seeing Joker as that one person, but instead he changes her. This all works pretty well for showing that there's a need for balance in life. The performances are pretty good in general. That being said, Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill are sorely missed. Spoilers, Joker has a cameo in this. I bet you didn't see that coming. I didn't remember it bothering me as much in Origins, but I've watched the animated series since then, so maybe that's it. The aesthetics are pretty good. They're not quite as good as the Rocksteady trilogy, but they're better than most of the aesthetics in Origins. You still get a lot of that nice Art Deco and Gothic architecture, even if the coloring isn't as strong. You do get a couple hour sequence at the beginning and a bit of the Arkham City map near the museum, which is cool to see up close. There's also a bit of Blackgate that was in Origins, and so it's good to see those things returning. Overall, this is a very fun game. It lives up to the Arkham series, which we haven't gotten an entry to in almost 10 years. Suicide Squad doesn't count. Anyway, so I'm giving this game a 9.05. Thank you anyone who likes, comments, or subscribes. That's it.